Hello everyone, this is Dr. K. Jagannayake, Professor in MBA Department, Institute of Aeronautical Engineering, Hyderabad. So today I would like to discuss about some of the problem solving and critical thinking questions in Module 2, which is related to break-even analysis and production cost analysis. After going through this topic, the learner will be able to understand the concept of critical thinking and problem solving in real life situations. So how different types of cost concepts and how the companies use break-even analysis as one of the tool to understand their profitability position in a business organization. So let us start with few of the real life situations. Which of the following statement best describes the general form of a production function and why? First one, it is a purely technological relationship between quantities of input and quantities of output. Second one, it represents the technology of an organization, sector of an economy. And third, prices of inputs or of the output do not enter into the production function. And fourth one is, it is a flow concept describing the transformation of inputs into output per unit of time. So the best statement that describes the general form of a production function is, let us take the first one. It is a purely technological relationship between quantities of input and quantities of output. So let us see why it is so. A production function, it describes the relationship between the quantity of inputs used in production and the quantity of output produced. So as we know, in case of production function, it is transformation of inputs into output, KL and T, which is equal to output. So output can be transformed by using the productive resources like cost of capital, labor, natural resources like land and technology. So using these four productive resources, we can easily maximize the productivity, which in terms turn into as an output. So it captures the technological efficiency of transforming inputs such as labor, capital, and raw materials into output. So prices of inputs and outputs as well as economic or market conditions are not considered in this relationship, except the inputs which are used for production process and which are going to transfer into a physical good or service. So it is solely about the physical or technical aspects of production. Let us see explanation of other options. The second one is, it represents the technology of an organization, a sector of an economy. So this statement is partially correct but too broad. So while a production function does reflect the technology, it is specifically the technological relationship between inputs and outputs. So according to marginal rate of technical substitution, MRTS, technically we can substitute one input variable with that of other. But in real sense, we may not substitute capital with labor and labor cannot be substituted with capital. So according to this particular statement, up to certain extent, we can have some kind of technological relationship between inputs and outputs. Coming to the third one, prices of inputs or of the output do not enter into the production function. So this statement is true and aligns with statement A, but it is not as comprehensive in describing the production function's primary focus, that is input-output relationship. So if you observe here, it does not show the true relationship between input and output functions. Whereas coming to fourth factor, that is, it is a flow concept describing the transformation of inputs into output per unit of time. So while this is also true that production function can describe flow processes, so this statement does not capture the essence of the production function being a technological relationship between inputs and outputs. So out of all the four, the first point is correct in relation with the production process. Then second one is technical and or managerial indivisibilities cause increasing return to scale. Give your opinion. So increasing returns to scale, which is also denoted as IRS, occur when a proportionate increase in all input result in a greater proportionate increase in output. So this phenomena can be attributed to technical and managerial invisibilities. So what are the things that comes under technical invisibilities? The first one is specialized equipment. So in many industries, certain types of machinery or equipment are only efficient at larger scales. For example, a large piece of machinery might be able to process materials at a significantly lower cost per unit than smaller equipment. So when production increases, the fixed cost of these specialized machines are spread over more units, leading to lower average cost and increasing returns to scale. Just by um, considering the type of technology whatever we are using in the production, if you are going to use the highly sophisticated machinery and production process, so that can produce more number of goods. As a result, our average cost of production will come down. That's how the companies they used to have cost advantages. That's how they used to increase returns to scale. Then production processes. Some production processes are more efficient when scaled up. For example, in chemical manufacturing, reactions might be more efficient at larger volumes due to better thermal management or economies of value. Then coming to managerial indivisibilities, management expertise. So we cannot differentiate the expertise of management. As firms grow, they can afford to hire more specialized managers and experts who will have expertise, knowledge, and skill in the relevant fields. So these individuals can optimize production processes, supply chains, and other business operations more effectively than a generalist manager in a small firm, because they will have all related skills and expertise in the relevant field. They know how best they can able to provide to the organization. As a result, they can maximize their efficiency and also productivity. The increased specialization and division of labor within management lead to more efficient operations and greater output for a given increase in inputs. So it depends how much and what kind of qualitative inputs you are using in the production process. Based on that, we'll get the output. Then administrative overheads is another thing. So under this head, the larger firms can spread the fixed cost of administration like legal, HR, and accounting departments over a greater number of units, reducing the average cost per unit, and this also contributes to increasing returns to scale. So how effectively you are managing the things, that depends upon the administrative staff who can lead the organizations. So based on that, they can able to reduce the expenditure, and as a result they can maximize returns to scale. So in the concluding part, technical and managerial indivisibilities are significant factors that can cause increasing returns to scale. So technical invisibilities arise from the efficiencies and cost advantages of using large scale equipment and processes, while managerial indivisibilities stem from the efficiencies gained through specialized management and spreading fixed administrative cost over a larger output. So together these factors enables the firms to produce more output per unit of input as they scale up, and resulting in increasing returns to scale. The next one, with the increase in output of firms, their average total cost and average variable cost curves come closer and closer to each other but never meet. Analyze. So the relationship between average total cost and average variable cost as output increases can be understood through the concepts of fixed and variable cost in the cost structure of a firm. So the definitions of average total cost, it can be derived by dividing the quantity of output produced with the total cost. It includes both fixed and variable cost. So total cost can be computed by using the formula average total cost is equal to total cost divided by quantity. So total cost is nothing but it is a combination of both fixed and variable cost divided by quantity. So average total cost can also be find out quantity divided by total cost. So quantity divided by fixed cost plus variable cost. Then coming to average variable cost, the variable cost is divided by the quantity of output produced. So average variable cost is equal to variable cost divided by quantity. Then what is the relationship between average total cost and average variable cost? So before going to find out this, so first of all we should know what is fixed cost. Fixed cost is that do not change with the level of output, whatever may be the level of output, whether you are going to produce 1000 units, 5000, 10,000 or 20, it remains constant. Examples include rent, salaries of permanent staff and machinery costs, they remains constant. So fixed costs are incurred even if the firm produces nothing. Coming to variable cost, these costs can change directly with the level of output. For example, include raw materials that may vary, labor directly involved in the production process, utilities used in production. So there we may find some kind of difference in terms of cost. Coming to the analysis part, as output increases, the fixed cost is spread over a larger number of units, and this means the average fixed cost, which is the fixed cost per unit of output, decreases. So fixed cost per unit it is decreased, but when you are taking as a aggregate at different levels of output, it remains the same. So average fixed cost can be derived by using the formula AFC is equal to fixed cost divided by quantity or quantity by fixed cost. The ATC is sum of ABC and AFC. So that is the relationship between average fixed cost and average variable cost, and the sum of these two is nothing but total cost. Then ATC is equal to ABC plus AFC plus ATC is equal to ABC plus AFC. As the quantity of output increases, the AFC becomes smaller and smaller because it is spread over more units of output. However, average variable cost is generally either constant or increases slowly with output due to factors such as diminishing marginal returns. So convergence but no meeting convergence. Since the average fixed cost decreases with an increase in output and the average variable cost is either constant or increases slowly, the difference between ATC and ABC diminishes. If you see, the ATC curve gets closer to the ABC curve as output increases because the AFC component of ATC gets smaller. As a result, they seems to be very closer, but they never met each other. No meeting. So despite of ATC curve getting closer to the ABC curve, they will never meet because the fixed cost through they become negligible at a very high levels of output but never become zero. So there is always some component of fixed cost contributing to the average total cost and keeping average total cost slightly higher than average variable cost. Then coming to the graphical representation, graphically the average total cost and average variable cost curves both tend to U shape due to economies or diseconomies of scale, but the gap between them, which is average fixed cost, narrows as output increases. So in conclusion, the phenomena where average total cost and average variable cost curve come closer as output increases but never meet and is a result of the decreasing average fixed cost being spread over more units. So while average fixed cost approach as zero as output becomes very large, it never completely vanishes, ensuring that ATC remains slightly above ABC. So this reflects the underlying cost structure of firms where fixed cost diminishes in per unit terms but never completely disappear. So it seems to be like it is reaching zero but it never reaches zero. The next one is examine the importance of law of diminishing returns. What do you think to be its causes and effects? The law of diminishing returns, also known as principle of diminishing marginal returns. It is a fundamental concept in economics that describes how after a certain point adding additional units of factor of production, either it may be labor or capital, will result in smaller and smaller increases in output. So this concept is crucial for understanding productivity, resource allocation, and decision making in both micro and macroeconomic contexts. And coming to the importance of the law of diminishing returns. So the first one is resource allocation. So it helps businesses and economies understand how to allocate resources most effectively. So recognizing the point at which additional inputs yield decreasing marginal returns allows firms to optimize their production processes and avoid wastage resources. So if the managers they can able to allocate resources up to optimum level, there should not be any kind of wastage of resources. That can be avoided with the help of effective resource allocation methods. The next one is cost management. By understanding this law, firms can better manage their cost. They can determine the optimal level of inputs to minimize cost and maximize output, which is critical for profitability. So if we want to generate more profits, the cost should be minimum and the revenue should be more. Then pricing and supply decisions. So the law influences supply decisions and pricing strategies. So as the cost of producing additional unit increases, the firms may adjust their prices to maintain profitability. So based on the number of units and volume of production, the companies will also adjust their cost control and as a result, they can have profitability in their business. Then comes economic policy. So policymakers use this principle to design effective economic policies. For example, understanding diminishing returns can inform decisions on tax rates, subsidies, and public investment in infrastructure or education. So sometimes even the government also announces some kind of subsidies and they will give some kind of tax relaxation and they will announce some kind of public investment in infrastructure. So all those leads to economies of scales to the companies. Then investment decisions. Investors consider diminishing returns when evaluating the potential returns of additional investments. So as we know, being the investor, we should not lose our investment by investing in highly complex and risky investments. So as a result, the investor always they try to analyze the investment alternatives in terms of risk and return. So this helps in making informed decisions about capital allocation. So they want to diversify their funds so that there will be some kind of security for their investment. And as a result, they can maximize their revenue by investing in various number of investment alternatives. Then what are the causes of diminishing returns? The first one is fixed factors of production. When one factor of production is fixed, if you take land or machinery, adding more of other factors like labor leads to inefficiencies because the fixed factor becomes a bottleneck. And another reason is limited complementary resources. So the effectiveness of additional inputs often depends on the availability of complementary resources. So if these complementary resources are limited, the productivity of additional inputs will diminish. And next one is overutilization of resources. As more units of a variable input are added, the existing resources can become overutilized. So leading to wear and tear, congestion, or other inefficiencies. So as a result, we should not utilize the resources overly, and even we cannot utilize under utilization. Both are harmful to the organization. The next, managerial inefficiencies. So increasing the scale of production can lead to managerial challenges. Coordination and communication difficulties can arise, and that leads to less efficient use of resources. So because of the inefficiencies and lack of coordination and proper communication is lacking between the people who are working in the organization, as a result, there will be less utilization of resources. Then, what are the effects of diminishing returns? Increased production cost. As marginal return decrease, the cost per unit of output increases. So this can impact pricing and profitability. And second effect is that optimal input level. So firms identify the point where diminishing returns set into determine the optimal level of input usage and balancing between input and output benefits. So as a result, they can go with optimum utilization of existing resources. Then comes scaling decisions. So businesses use this concept to make scaling decisions, knowing that beyond a certain point, expanding production may not be cost effective. So up to certain level, it may be cost effective, but thereafter if go on adding some more additional unit, as a result, it may not provide the economies of scales to the organizations. The next, market dynamics. So in a broader market context, diminishing returns can influence industry supply curves, market prices, and affecting overall market equilibrium. So always one should remember they should maintain equilibrium between demand and supply conditions. In conclusion, the law of diminishing returns is a crucial principle that helps businesses, investors, and policymakers make informed decisions about resource allocation, production processes, and economic strategies. So the management, businesses, investors, and policymakers, they should have some kind of knowledge and awareness about how to allocate the resources effectively and what kind of production processes they should opt for, and what kind of economic strategies the business should pay so that they can maximize their profits. So understanding its causes and effects of allows more efficient and effective management of resources and leading to better economic outcomes. Thank you.
Like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.